Known in the past as Taprobane, Serendip and Ceylon, Sri Lanka is an island that is captivating both by its name, that means land of splendor, and by what it actually offers the visitor. The natural beauty of the island's tropical forests, beaches and varied landscape, as well as its rich cultural heritage, makes Sri Lanka a world-famous tourist attraction. Sri Lanka was under Portuguese, Dutch and British rule from 1505 to 1948, and signs of its colonial legacy still remain. The country has a history spanning several centuries, as noted in the Mahavamsa, which dates back over 2,500 years. Home to four major religions of the world: Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity, Sri Lanka is steeped in culture and tradition, which is witnessed by year-round festivals. Offering unique sights and sounds, Sri Lanka is a land like no other. Following independence in 1948, Sri Lanka showed great promise of achieving prosperity and emerging a leading nation in Asia. The expected boom was short-lived due to the manifestation of ethnic conflicts and the outbreak of a protracted arms insurrection by extremist groups from the early 1970s. Thousands of people were killed and maimed by these conflicts, which lasted nearly 3 decades. Thousands became widows and orphans, and many lost even their sense of identity. The country experienced widespread devastation. The entire island suffered from the heightened sense of insecurity and the reduced freedom of movement due to the threat of attacks on the country's capital and key public institutions. Indiscriminate bombings by extremists resulted in the deaths of hundreds of civilians, from those traveling in public transport to leading public figures and politicians. Almost the entire political leadership in the southern part of Sri Lanka was targeted, and a large number were assassinated.
Percy Mahendra Rajapaksa වන මම ශ්‍රී ලංකා ප්‍රජාතාන්ත්‍රික සමාජවාදී ජනරජයේ ජනාධිපති ධූරයේ.
In November 2005, the incumbent president, His Excellency Mahinda Rajapaksa, came into office with the promise of bringing a negotiated settlement or eliminating terrorism by military means. Upon the failure of the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam to negotiate a peaceful resolution following several attempts by the government to engage the separatist movement in peace talks since 2005, a military option was finally sought to end the conflict. The president's promise and the people's mandate were fulfilled when the government's security forces defeated the LTTE in May 2009. The final stages of conflict dominated the local and international media in the weeks and days leading up to it. Thousands of people were held as human shields by the separatists, and those who survived were trapped in a small area of land. The Sri Lankan forces conducted their operations as a highly disciplined fighting force, which was backed by popular public support. The displaced population during the final phase of war were accommodated in temporary welfare camps set up by the government until the resettlement process could commence, following mine clearance activities back in people's home villages. Sri Lanka is probably the only country in the world which has successfully eliminated a strong and ruthless extremist force which engaged in guerrilla warfare, pioneered the use of suicide bombers, and committed countless human rights violations. Immediately following the end of conflict, there was a sense of widespread relief as the shadow of war had finally been lifted. People celebrated on the streets, elated that they no longer had to fear any terrorist attacks and could once again enjoy an unrestricted freedom of movement. There was much left to be rebuilt. The government embarked on a comprehensive resettlement, reconstruction and rehabilitation program. The mammoth task of resettling hundreds of thousands of families was achieved in a relatively short time, thanks to the timely measures taken by the government. The resettlement and reconstruction processes have since progressed steadily and are today close upon completion. The nearly 12,000 ex-combatants who willingly surrendered during the final phase of the conflict and the period leading up to it have been successfully rehabilitated. Reintegrated back into society, these individuals have also been provided with the necessary support to pursue education and vocational training and lead gainful lives. 4 years since the conflict ended, the manner in which it was conducted continues to be questioned by sections of the international community who allege that war crimes took place in the country. The government's response to this has been in the form of its own appointed Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission to fast-track the post-war reconciliation process. The report on the Commission of Inquiry on Lessons Learned and Reconciliation, made public on 16 December 2011, has been commended for containing a broad range of recommendations for concrete improvements on human rights. This was followed by the National Plan of Action, which presents a selection of the Commission's recommendations to be implemented by the government, providing information on the implementing agencies for each recommendation, performance indicators, and time schedule for completion. The government's reconciliation initiatives extend far beyond the appointment of the Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission. Among the several initiatives, one stands out: the Nanaguna Vaduma Sisudiriya program. The participants of the program comprise students from former conflict zones who have experienced numerous hardships and trauma as a result of the 3-decade-long conflict. The program seeks to change mindsets which have been conditioned by fear, anxiety, and suspicion by providing opportunities to interact with students from other ethnic groups and parts of the country. To date, thousands of students have benefited from the numerous therapeutic and skills development programs organized under the Nanaguna Vaduma Sisudiriya initiative, which is another example of Sri Lanka's steady progress towards national reconciliation. The government continues to prioritize the ongoing reconciliation process. The country's way forward is set out in the Mahinda Chintana, which is President Rajapaksa's strategic vision for the country's future. The Mahinda Chintana seeks to achieve a range of goals relating to the socio-economic development of Sri Lanka and includes positioning the country as the emerging wonder of Asia, which is well within sight now that the conflict has finally ended. country is making steady progress in promoting reconciliation and bringing about peace, development and prosperity to all its people. The world community can do much to help Sri Lanka in its recovery efforts and to fulfill its vision of becoming the wonder of Asia.